Yesterday's courtroom bombshell came courtesy of Cassie Ventura, 8 months pregnant and emotionally raw, as she took the stand in the explosive federal sex crimes trial against Sean Diddy Combs. As the prosecution's star witness and Diddy's former girlfriend, Cassie delivered tearful, gut-wrenching testimony, painting a disturbing picture of her time with the music mogul. She claimed he physically abused her, manipulated her, and forced her into degrading sex acts during drug-fueled parties that prosecutors say were all part of a larger operation involving blackmail and coercion. The allegations are chilling. Sex trafficking, racketeering, and transporting individuals across state lines for prostitution. Combs has pleaded not guilty to every charge. Cassie's testimony spanned 6 intense hours, laying the foundation for the prosecution's case. But now, the spotlight shifts to the defense. Today, attorney Xavier Donaldson, Combs' go-to legal bulldog, is expected to dismantle Cassie's credibility on the stand. Known for his sharp cross-examinations, Donaldson is expected to dig deep, challenge every detail, and shift the narrative in Diddy's favor. With the world watching and the stakes impossibly high, this trial is already shaping up to be one of the most dramatic courtroom battles in modern celebrity history. But that was only the beginning. The tension is mounting, and things are escalating fast. In this video, we'll break down everything that happened on day 3 of the trial, and trust, it gets even more intense. Before diving into the explosive events of day 3, there's a flurry of behind-the-scenes legal drama playing out in the courthouse, and it's just as intense as the testimony itself. Diddy's defense team fired off a letter to Judge Aaron Romanian, raising major concerns about witness communication during cross-examination. Their argument? Witnesses, especially Cassie Ventura, should not be allowed to speak with their attorneys while under cross. The defense claims this kind of access could lead to coaching, allowing witnesses to shift their strategy mid-testimony and potentially dodge tough questions. Why does this matter? Cross-examination is the defense's most powerful weapon, a high-pressure moment meant to expose inconsistencies and weaken the prosecution's case. If Cassie, who is the prosecution's key witness, can consult her lawyer during breaks, the defense argues it gives her an unfair advantage, one that could blunt the force of their questioning. The concern isn't just theoretical either. Cassie's former civil attorney, Douglas Wigdor, is sitting beside her in court. The defense fears that his presence could lead to behind-the-scenes guidance that reshapes her criminal trial testimony. But Wigdor wasn't having it. He responded swiftly with a letter of his own, pushing back hard on the defense's claims. He argued that their motion was legally baseless, pointing out that the rules they're referencing typically apply to criminal defendants, not witnesses like Cassie. He assured the court that neither he nor anyone on Cassie's legal team would act unethically. More importantly, he stressed that Cassie, who is visibly pregnant and under intense stress, needs access to her lawyers for practical reasons: health concerns, court logistics, and ongoing civil matters. Blocking that communication, he says, would violate her basic rights as a victim. Wigdor also invoked the Crime Victims' Rights Act, demanding that Cassie be treated with fairness, dignity, and respect. According to him, the defense's request isn't just legally questionable, it's also morally out of bounds. His response makes it clear. This isn't just about legal strategy. It's about setting the tone for how alleged victims of abuse are treated in high-profile trials. And the message? They're not backing down. On top of all that, another bombshell dropped late last night. A separate motion was filed to quash a subpoena for Clayton Howard, also known as Dave, who's been identified as one of the alleged sex workers involved with both Diddy and Cassie. Now, both the prosecution and the defense must review the motion and Diddy's official response, making any necessary redactions before the court's deadline on May 16, 2025. The pressure is building from every angle, and day 3 of the trial is about to deliver even more heat. Clayton Howard, also known as Dave, may not have to appear in court just yet, but he's not off the hook. The judge has ordered him to submit all subpoenaed materials directly for private review, known as an in-camera examination. That means he'll need to turn over documents, messages, or any requested evidence for the judge's eyes only by May 16th. This move doesn't guarantee Howard won't testify later, but for now, the court is laser-focused on what's in those files before deciding his next steps. And with his alleged connection to both Diddy and Cassie, those materials could be a game changer. As day 3 of the trial kicked off, courtroom tension was already simmering. Before testimony even resumed, the judge announced a juror had submitted a private note requesting a scheduling accommodation. Then came another curveball. Cassie Ventura's husband was ordered to be removed from the courtroom during a sensitive segment, hinting that even more personal and potentially explosive testimony was about to unfold. The court also confirmed that privacy screens were being installed, signaling that some of what's coming may be too graphic or emotional for public viewing. Behind the scenes, legal skirmishes were heating up between both teams. One major issue? Whether witnesses can speak with their lawyers during breaks in cross-examination. Diddy's attorney, Alexandra Shapiro, raised concerns that casual conversations during recess could easily drift into testimony-related discussions, something that could muddy the waters around privileged communication. The prosecution pushed back, insisting they needed to talk logistics and security with witnesses, especially those facing multiple days of intense questioning. The judge, walking a fine line, asked for suggested instructions to be drafted on the spot. But that wasn't the only friction. The prosecution accused Diddy's team of sandbagging, claiming they'd been handed surprise exhibits and batches of text messages that should have been disclosed weeks ago. According to prosecutors, these documents were withheld until the last minute, potentially disrupting the direct and cross-examinations of key witnesses like Cassie. Diddy's defense, led by Anna Maria Stabo and Mark Nipolo, fired back, arguing that they've complied with Rule 16 and that the exhibits didn't fall under required early disclosure. Still, the judge made it clear: produce the evidence before cross begins. By midday, the courtroom had turned into a battleground of objections, zipped files, and real-time rulings. The judge, clearly juggling multiple fires, told the defense to email him any legal precedents directly. No need for formal letters, just get it done. With a key witness waiting in the wings and procedural fireworks still going off, day 3 was shaping up to be a pivotal moment. And what happens next? Let's just say, things are about to get even messier. Cassie Ventura was called back to the stand, and the courtroom immediately snapped to attention. The judge greeted her, reminding everyone that she remained under oath. Jurors returned, eyes locked on the witness box as the prosecution handed Cassie 2 new drives. Inside, a treasure trove of evidence, messages and photos directly from her personal devices. With the digital receipts in hand, the prosecutor wasted no time revisiting some of the most harrowing details from her previous testimony, including the moment Diddy, allegedly armed, went searching for Suge Knight, asking Cassie to question escorts to see if they were undercover cops. The tension escalated as the court was shown hotel surveillance footage from the Intercontinental in Los Angeles. The jury watched frame by frame as Diddy appeared in the hallway, first empty-handed, then, moments later, seen holding Cassie's phone. She explained that he had taken all of her belongings during the altercation. In another clip, he's seen seated in a chair while Cassie tries to walk away. The prosecution pressed her for details about that night, how she escaped the hotel, took an Uber back to her house, and the text messages that followed. Those messages painted a grim picture. Diddy repeatedly messaged her things like, "I'm surrounded and please call me." Cassie, in return, tried to de-escalate, telling him she was plugging in her phone and going to bed. But the damage had already been done. She had injuries, including a swollen lip she captured in a selfie while in the Uber. She showed the jury text exchanges where she begged him to stay away. At her apartment, a friend named Carrie Morgan was so disturbed by her condition, she immediately called the police. Cassie admitted she didn't reveal Diddy's name, saying simply, "I wasn't ready." Despite the chaos, Cassie said she felt compelled to protect Diddy. After the hotel incident, she went to stay with mutual friends, Drock and his wife, just to feel safe. But 2 days later, she found herself at Diddy's house, doing a fitting for her upcoming movie premiere. The jury was shown a photo of Cassie in a glamorous gown, sunglasses hiding her black eye. The premiere was for The Perfect Match, a romantic comedy. Yet the images from that night told a far darker story. In a photo from the after-party, she pointed out a bruise on her shin, just another reminder of what had happened days before. Then came one of the most disturbing parts of her testimony. The prosecution brought up a series of male escorts, asking Cassie to identify them one by one. These weren't random encounters. She stated many of them were hired through a high-end site called Cowboys for Angels, which marketed itself as a provider of elite male companionship. Cassie confirmed that Diddy frequently used their services, sometimes for his own interests, sometimes involving her. As names and faces flashed across the screen, Jonathan, Tommy, Greg, Islander, the courtroom sat frozen. Some of them were familiar to Cassie, others only recognized from so-called Freakoffs. Locations included New York, Miami, Los Angeles, and Las Vegas. This wasn't a one-off scenario, it was a pattern. And with each new escort introduced, a fuller picture emerged of what was really happening behind the velvet ropes and red carpet facades. The jury was visibly rattled. The combination of emotional testimony, digital proof, and graphic accounts of what Cassie endured was beginning to fracture the carefully curated image of a music mogul. But this is only the tip of the iceberg. What comes next will pull back the curtain even further, revealing not just private escapades, but the hidden machinery behind Diddy's empire and who else may have been involved. Buckle up. This is about to get even darker. The courtroom shifted into an even darker gear as Cassie Ventura continued identifying a long list of male escorts, some by name, others only by face. There was Ash, Tommy, Greg, and one known only as Islander. Each one brought the jury deeper into a world most people couldn't imagine, a world of freak-offs, secret rendezvous, and an escalating pattern of abuse that blurred the line between control and catastrophe. When asked to explain a message she once sent, "This is all we do. I'm just getting back on track. I'm sure you can call Kim or something." Cassie didn't hesitate. "Freak-offs," she said. That's what the message was about, her tone flat, her eyes tired. And when asked what she tried to avoid during those freak-offs, her answer was simple: kissing. It felt too intimate. But according to Cassie, Diddy demanded it anyway. The prosecution presented messages where he proposed they have a proper freak-off without ketamine, a drug often used during these encounters. In one message, he said a successful freak-off was one we remember. He promised he wouldn't bring it up again until she was in the mood. And when that moment came, he'd fly in a man named Dave. Dave, whose real name is Clayton Howard, was subpoenaed earlier in the case, but the subpoena was quashed. However, he's still required to submit materials directly to the judge. Then came her 29th birthday. What should have been a joyful occasion was turned into another orchestrated freak-off. Cassie said she was pulled out of a lounge called Blind Dragon by security and forced to participate. But it didn't stop there. Diddy allegedly used recordings of these events as blackmail. When she tried to move on and date someone else, he threatened to release videos. "I'm going to release 2 embarrassing videos of you," he told her, according to her testimony. "I'd have to answer to my mother," she said. "It was horrible and disgusting. No one should do that to anyone." Cassie shared messages where she begged him to delete the footage. "Too many people have access to your stuff," she wrote. He claimed he deleted it, but she testified that she later discovered the videos still existed. The implication was chilling. Diddy never really let go of control. The courtroom paused briefly for a technical adjustment, but not before Diddy was seen speaking privately with his attorney, Xavier Donaldson. When court resumed, the judge brought the jury back in, and the prosecution rolled out a new wave of exhibits. In another devastating turn, Cassie recalled a moment when she learned a sexually explicit video of her was circulating. DJ Kid allegedly saw it at a party in Atlantic City and brought it to her attention. When she texted Diddy about it, his response was immediate. "This is crazy. Do not let him out of your sight." Her account painted a picture of a man obsessed with control over her body, her image, even her silence. She said the trauma of those freak-offs often left her needing to numb the pain. Opiates, IV drips, massages, anything to make the pain disappear. But the physical toll wasn't something she could hide. Cassie testified to suffering repeated urinary tract infections and painful sores, symptoms she described in text sent directly to Diddy. "I have all these sores on my tongue. I have another UTI," she wrote. The implication was clear. These weren't isolated incidents. They were part of a cycle, one she says she endured in silence for years. She described expressing her discomfort to Diddy, only to hear him say, "I'm sorry." But that apology, she claimed, didn't stop the behavior. And then came one of the most disturbing revelations yet. Cassie testified that during some of these freak-offs, when she was being physically assaulted, male escorts were in the room. Sometimes just feet away, sometimes watching, sometimes aware. When asked if Jules, the escort from the Intercontinental Hotel incident, was ever present, she confirmed, yes, in the same room, in the suite. She says Diddy would grab her, push her down, hit her, kick her. And more often than not, the violence was witnessed. The prosecution is building towards something even darker, and in the next section, the full scope of the alleged psychological warfare will come into view. The courtroom grew tense as Cassie revisited a disturbing incident from 2013. She had been at home with two friends, preparing for a music festival hosted by Drake in Canada. According to her testimony, Sean Combs stormed into her apartment and launched into a tirade, angry that she was resting on the couch instead of packing. When she tried to explain, things escalated. He lunged at her, prompting her friends to intervene. But it wasn't enough. She was thrown so hard, her eyebrow was split open on the edge of the bed frame. After the attack, Cassie said it wasn't an ambulance that came. It was Combs' security team. They took her to a high-end plastic surgeon in Beverly Hills. She later texted him a photo of her injury with a haunting message. "So you can remember." His reply? Cold. He accused her of pushing too far, refusing to take accountability. Cassie recalled escorts even asking her if she was okay after certain nights, an eerie reminder that others witnessed more than they let on. The abuse, she said, spanned across cities: New York, Los Angeles, Miami. Too frequently, she told the court when asked how often it happened. From the Abbey, a popular gay club in LA, to Toronto's green rooms, she claimed she covered bruises with her hair. In the Hamptons, things took a darker turn. Combs allegedly organized yet another freak-off, this time with a man named Dave. Cassie took GHB, blacked out, and woke up in a shower at noon, disoriented, humiliated, with Combs and Dave frantically pacing outside. A week later, her eyebrow was still healing, but the trauma followed her to Cannes. On a yacht during the film festival, Combs allegedly accused her of stealing drugs from his boat and threw her off, without her passport. Hours later, she appeared on the red carpet as if nothing had happened. But after the movie, things took a sinister twist. She claimed he traded plane seats just to sit next to her. On his laptop, he played freak-off videos he allegedly threatened to release if she didn't comply. That night in New York, after landing, Cassie said they went to dinner, and then another freak-off. "Why did you do it?" the prosecution asked. "To make him not threaten me," she answered. Her voice cracked but remained steady. These weren't isolated incidents. There were patterns, repetition, cycles of fear and submission. She testified that she'd told him, repeatedly, she didn't want to participate. But her resistance didn't matter. The text messages told their own story. One from June 13, 2013, revealed a frantic effort to coordinate yet another freak-off. Escorts were being scheduled like Uber rides. "Only Paul available or Jake the white guy," she had texted. "But he can't do it until 11. The other guy can do earlier. It's just one more person knowing our secret." Every word painted a picture of someone trapped in a world of coercion, shame, and surveillance. And then came the pills. Valium for anxiety, delivered directly to her by Combs' driver. The emotional toll of these experiences wasn't just psychological, it was chemical. Cassie described numbing herself just to get through the nights, but her testimony was far from over. As jurors left for their lunch break, the court prepared for what came next. A deeper dive into the manipulation, the surveillance, and the chilling ways in which silence was enforced. The courtroom shifted back to Cassie's harrowing testimony after a brief reference to another alleged victim, Mia, whose story would be tackled in the next session. With lunch over, the judge called for Cassie to return to the stand. Jurors filed in. The prosecutor handed over a binder filled with sealed exhibits, visible only to the court and jury. These weren't just documents, They were still images from explicit videos, disturbing remnants of what Cassie described as coerced encounters involving herself and men named Jules, Dave, and Greg. Cassie identified the images reluctantly. They were taken from videos stored on electronic devices she had once believed were broken. But she handed them to the government anyway, hoping they could serve as evidence. One image showed her skin slick with oil. Another instance she claimed had been recorded without her full consent. These weren't isolated incidents, she emphasized. Multiple people in Combs's inner circle, security, assistants, even managers, had seen her being abused over the years. Some, she said, even quit because they couldn't stomach the violence. When asked when the abuse began, Cassie didn't hesitate. It started in the first year. She described an early incident in New York City where she was riding in an Escalade with Combs and his security team. After confronting him about flirting with another woman at dinner, she said he struck her in the side of the head, sending her crashing to the floor of the SUV. She admitted there were moments in the relationship where she lashed out, but unlike Combs, her actions never left lasting injuries. The violence didn't end in cars. She described another beating that left her so bruised and battered, she was hidden away in a hotel for over a week. After she punched him for calling her a slur, Cassie said Combs stomped her face while she lay on the floor of a vehicle. Security didn't stop it. Instead, they quietly smuggled her into the London hotel, wrapped up to hide her wounds. An assistant named Genevieve brought her ice cream while she stayed hidden, waiting for the bruises to fade. When asked why she didn't just leave, her answer was chilling. "I understood his capabilities," she said, referring to Combs' access to firearms and the violent threats he often made. Her mother eventually learned something had happened, not from Cassie, but from an anonymous gossip item online that mirrored the assault's details. Cassie confessed that she hadn't told her mother the truth out of shame and fear. She didn't want to endanger her by involving her in the chaos that had become her life. Then came the story of the party. Cassie said she had gone out with a friend to see Prince perform. She hadn't asked Combs for permission, because she already knew the answer would be no. But when Combs showed up at the event, she fled the moment she spotted him. That night, back at a hotel, she said he beat her again, this time throwing luggage at her in a rage. These weren't drunken spats or lovers' quarrels. They were deliberate, escalating acts of violence, and they were getting harder to hide. And then came 2011. During one of the so-called Freakoffs, Combs looked through Cassie's phone. What he found would ignite another explosion. A single email sent to rapper Kid Cudi was enough to trigger his fury. But what followed wasn't just about jealousy, it was surveillance, retaliation, and punishment. And the fallout from that moment, that's where things spiral even further, and it's exactly what comes next. Cassie's testimony only grew darker. She described the moment Sean Combs discovered she had taken a toiletry bag to Kid Cudi's house. That tiny detail sent him into a violent rage. Furious and out of control, he lunged at her with a wine bottle opener during a so-called freak-off. Terrified, Cassie fled, but things were far from over. Combs had already threatened to hurt both her and Cudi and, in retaliation, released 2 explicit videos of Cassie without her consent. That night, she called Cudi from a burner phone. She was scared, cornered, and running out of options. After contacting Capricorn Clark, one of Combs's assistants, Cassie made the impossible decision to return to Combs's house, hoping to stop the videos from being released. Instead, she was met with more violence. He kicked her in the back, hard enough to leave bruises. She fled again, this time to her hotel room, only to find it trashed. The bathroom had been defiled with urine and feces, the furniture overturned. From a flight to Boston and then Connecticut, she sent desperate emails to her mother in Capricorn, warning them that Combs had threatened to have her and Kid Cudi harmed and planned to release the tape on Christmas, then flee the country. When prosecutors showed her photographs of her injuries, Cassie confirmed that her mother had taken them in Connecticut. But even then, she hadn't told the full truth. She only admitted to her mother that it was the first time Combs had hurt her. She didn't dare mention the freak-offs. The weight of her silence, her shame, and her fear was palpable. At that point, the court took a break. When they resumed, prosecutors prepared to wrap up Cassie's direct testimony and begin cross-examination. She shared that Kid Cudi, whom she called Scott, visited her briefly in Connecticut, but she ended the relationship. It was simply too dangerous. Combs had made it clear, if they stayed together, there would be consequences. Cassie said she left Connecticut to meet Combs in Arizona, under the pretense of a work trip to Los Angeles. There, Combs made another chilling threat. He wanted Kid Cudi's friends to watch as his car was blown up. And when Cudi confronted him later, asking about his vehicle, Combs dismissed it with a smug, "What bike? That's my bike." The threat hung in the air, unresolved. Another photo entered into evidence showed Cassie and Combs in Kingston, Jamaica. Yes, she confirmed, she had bruises in that photo. Then came a shot taken in Combs' bathroom on September 18, 2015. Cassie explained she was hiding out, recovering from yet another beating, this time in Las Vegas. The night of the attack, they had been hosting an after-party in their suite. She was chatting with a music producer when Combs tapped her shoulder and ordered her into the room. Once inside, he beat her, kicked her, and she tried to shield herself behind the toilet. It finally ended when two men, D-Rock and James Cruz, walked in. Cassie remembered D-Rock's face. He looked heartbroken. Text messages from D-Rock confirmed the brutal aftermath. "Where you at?" he wrote. "It's time to ice your face." The bruises weren't speculation. They were routine. When asked if those were the only beatings she suffered, Cassie shook her head. There were more, many more. She even witnessed Combs' violence against others. One night, she saw him drag an assistant out of bed. Another time, he punched someone named Eli, or Ellie, in the head. And in Turks and Caicos, she saw him dragging a person across the room during yet another freak-off. The violence, it seemed, wasn't reserved for just one victim. And what happened in Turks and Caicos? That's where everything started to unravel, where freak-offs collided with fury and the mask began to slip in front of others. The next chapter of this nightmare doesn't just involve Cassie. It pulls in new names, new witnesses, and even more disturbing layers to the alleged truth. And the next witness? She's not just another woman. She's victim number 4. And her story will take this case to an even darker place. At 875 Comstock, she lived high up, on the 17th floor. But what happened behind those glass doors wasn't just luxury living. It was survival. A friend once stayed with her, and she witnessed something she would never forget. Sean Combs allegedly grabbed the woman, dragged her out onto the balcony, and threw her down onto the patio furniture. For a chilling moment, it looked like he might toss her over the edge. Then, just as suddenly, he pulled her back from the ledge, only to hurl her again onto the hard furniture. Another woman, Carrie Morgan, was reportedly struck in the head by Combs during that same period. Violence didn't just live in that apartment, it haunted every corner of it. The drug use wasn't random. Cassie explained that she didn't always seek drugs herself. Sometimes they were just there. Opiates, Xanax, Valium. They'd show up in vitamin C bottles on the sink of their New York apartment. According to her, Sean had a system. Doctors would write the prescriptions under fake names or even under her own. It wasn't just recreational, it was a routine, disguised as self-care, weaponized as control. Then came the 2013 incident in Connecticut. At her brother's birthday party, Cassie's mother warned her that someone had been secretly taking photos of her. Cassie didn't hesitate. She walked straight up to the woman and punched her in the head. That flash of rage, buried under years of fear, was just one of many signs that the trauma was catching up with her. She later admitted her mental health had deteriorated badly. By the time her relationship with Combs ended in 2018, she was suffering from PTSD. She even began sleepwalking. One photo shown in court told 1,000 stories. It was of Cassie's front door in 2018, with a knife wedged into it. Why? Because, as she explained, Sean kept showing up. She didn't feel safe, not even in her own home. She carried that knife for protection, not paranoia. And then came August 2018, a night she will never forget. What was supposed to be a conversation for closure in Malibu turned into something far more sinister. They met at a restaurant. He tried convincing her to go to Burning Man, but she had moved on. She was seeing someone else. That didn't sit well with Combs. According to her testimony, he showed up at her house later that night. And what happened next was devastating. She says he assaulted her on her living room floor. His eyes were black, lifeless. "It was like taking something from you," she said through tears. And when it was over, he simply got up and left. No remorse, no apology, just silence. Despite that, the cycle continued. In a heartbreaking revelation, Cassie admitted that she later returned to him voluntarily. She said they had a good night, and she even went back to his house. It's a reality many survivors face, trapped between trauma, manipulation, and a deep, confusing attachment. The courtroom was still, the jury listening to every word. But this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of a deeper unraveling. Because what happens next isn't just about Cassie. The timeline begins to fracture. More women step forward. More layers are exposed. And the disturbing truth about what went on behind closed doors, on balconies, in apartments, at parties, comes crashing into public view. In the next chapter, it's not just Cassie's story on the line. It's the entire legacy of Sean Combs, and it's hanging by a thread. 10 years. That's how long she was with Sean Combs. So when people questioned why she stayed so long, her answer was simple. After a decade of emotional dependency, detachment doesn't come easily. But even after it all ended, the connection wasn't truly severed. She pulled away from most people, but somehow she still found herself messaging Sean. Just checking in. Just keeping the peace. And then he hit her with a chilling message. He claimed to have iPads, full of images. It was a veiled threat, another power move. He also demanded money, not just any money. He wanted reimbursement for paying her now husband, who used to be her personal trainer. It was like every memory came with a price tag, but Cassie's response was blunt. "Do you want me to tell the truth?" Because, as she said, it was about more than just iPads. It was about the abuse, the manipulation. The nights so dark she once tried walking into traffic, only stopped by her husband physically pulling her back. The pain had built up in layers. Eventually, she tried to make sense of it all by writing a book. Chapter by chapter, with the help of her mother, she poured out the truth. But this wasn't a memoir for fame. It was a last-ditch attempt to be heard. She hoped Sean would read it, understand it, maybe even feel something. But the only thing she got back? Silence. Through an attorney, she sent the manuscript. Later, someone close to him told her the pages were not taken seriously. Like the trauma was just another story to skim and ignore. She asked for $30 million for the rights to the book. Not as a shakedown, but as a reckoning. It didn't end there. In November 2023, everything spilled out in public when she filed a lawsuit. The shocking part? It settled in just 24 hours. Sean Combs paid out $20 million and the world watched in disbelief. The speed of the settlement said more than any courtroom argument ever could. So why is she testifying now? Cassie answered it herself. "I can't carry this anymore." This isn't just about personal closure. It's about standing up for herself, for other victims, and for the truth. She admitted that in her past, she treated others like they were disposable, escorts, strangers, people used in Sean's so-called freakoffs. She was complicit in a system she no longer wants to protect. But now, she's done staying silent. As for how many freak-offs she had with Sean, she said it was impossible to count. Hundreds. The acts were endless, numbing, and mechanical. They blurred together over the years, creating a pattern of control disguised as intimacy. But after she broke free, after she finally left Sean behind, she never participated in one again. Never. But if you think this is the end of the road, it's not. Because what happens next will reveal how deep this pattern really goes, how many people knew, how many stayed silent, and how many more victims might still be hiding in the shadows. The storm isn't over. It's just beginning. Just as things were heating up, the courtroom took a sharp left turn. The defense was ready to dive into cross-examination, but the judge wasn't having it, at least not tonight. The witness, visibly exhausted and reportedly pregnant, had already been through hours of testimony. And the judge? He made the call. No cross today. The jury was ushered back in, only to be sent right back out. It was a delay no one expected. Then came the behind-the-scenes scramble. Prosecutors weren't thrilled. They wanted to start now to stay on schedule. But the defense team had other plans. One of Diddy's attorneys, Miss Estavo, claimed they'd wrap by the end of the week, but not tonight. The judge, balancing it all, reassured the courtroom they'd make up the time in other ways. Everyone stood. The jury exited, and the stage was suddenly quiet, but only for a moment, because what came next was a verbal chess match, prosecutors and defense lawyers sparring over what should be allowed in tomorrow's cross. The prosecution quickly flagged a red line. They had previously agreed that other sexual acts involving the witness wouldn't be brought up. But now, it seemed the defense planned to drag in unrelated relationships, late-night texts, and intimate messages, painting a different kind of picture. Diddy's lead attorney, Nicolo, wasn't backing down. His argument? These weren't just raunchy texts, they were expressions of jealousy, of emotional chaos, and of a broken relationship. This is how people talk when they're hurt, he said. It's fair game. But prosecutors fired back. These messages weren't relevant and should be sealed. They warned this wasn't about honesty. It was about humiliation. The judge weighed both sides. He acknowledged that saying, "Are you effing that person?" might be crass, but it's essentially just another way of asking, "Are you cheating?" And with both sides already locked in a narrative about infidelity, he didn't immediately shut it down. Still, he didn't want the courtroom to turn into a circus either. "Let's proceed without specifics," he ordered. The idea of moving the discussion into a private robbing room was floated, but that required Diddy himself to be present. The prosecution wasn't sure that was the right call. Meanwhile, one more voice jumped into the mix. Counsel for one of the other alleged victims. Mr. Wigdor raised his hand, asking to be heard. He said they were entitled to advance notice before this kind of material was brought in. The judge acknowledged the point, but pushed the decision to tomorrow. And just like that, the courtroom emptied out once again, with tension hanging heavy in the air. The message was clear. The real fireworks were coming in the morning. Tomorrow's cross-examination could rip the lid off everything, introducing new texts, new claims, and possibly a new strategy from Diddy's team. If you thought today was explosive, what's coming next could blow the case wide open. And that's just the beginning, because what Cassie revealed in court today is shaking the entire industry to its core. Her testimony wasn't just emotional, it was explosive. And if you thought this was wild, just wait until you see what's coming next. Drop a comment below and let it all out. What shocked you the most? What do you believe? Let's talk about it. And if you're into deep dives like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button, tap the like, and ring the bell, because the next episode is going to be even crazier, and you won't want to miss it.